Hello and welcome everyone to our Austin ISD community conversation. This evening we're meeting with the Austin and McCallum vertical team, but we did see some folks who had asked if they were able to attend if they missed theirs, and that absolutely is welcome. So if we have some folks from other vertical teams, welcome as well. I'm Ali Ghilarducci. I'm the Supervisor of Community Engagement and External Communications with AISD. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items. So we do have Spanish interpretation for this meeting. If you would like to access that interpretation, and this is going to be translated, if you'd like to access that interpretation, go to the toolbar, typically at the bottom of your screen, and find the little globe icon and select your language. We also will have, I believe, ASL interpretation this evening. And we're going to put instructions in the chat for how to do that, how to access that. You're going to want to pin their video. And we're going to be switching back and forth between the two, so we'll give you indications of when that happens in the chat as well. So before we begin, we're going to go ahead and do our own introductions, but I want to get a sense, we don't have time to talk to every one of you, but we would like to get a sense of who is here with us. So if you wouldn't mind dropping your name and your school affiliation in the chat, that will help us get a sense of who's here with us. And just as a reminder, this is the staff session. The community session will begin immediately after this, but if we have community members here, that's fine as well. And this meeting is being recorded, and we will be uploading these videos for folks, if you want to share with colleagues at your school, that they could access at a later date.
Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a esta charla. Si ustedes prefieren escuchar esta charla en español, se les está ofreciendo servicio de interpretación. Si usted quiere, en la esquina derecha de su pantalla hay un globito que dice interpretación, puede hacer clic ahí y ahí escoge su idioma, en español o en inglés. Si es muy ruidoso y no puede entender bien lo que dice, seleccione silenciar la charla principal. Muchas gracias.
So much, and with that, we'll go ahead and start introducing our chiefs that are here with us this evening. So I'll go ahead and start with our superintendent.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking time to join us in our one of many community conversations that we will continue to have, and we just really appreciate your engagement. Stephanie Elizalde, and I serve as your superintendent for Austin ISD. Thank you.
Thank you. And our Chief Academic Officer?
Good afternoon, everyone. Elizabeth Casas, Chief Academic Officer. Thank you for joining us tonight. Look forward to the conversation.
Chief of Schools?
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everyone. Anthony Mays, Chief of Schools. Glad to be a part of the conversation this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. You'd like to make an entrance, I see. And our Equity Officer, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Stephanie Hawley, Equity Officer, and welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Next, we have our Chief Technology Officer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sean Brinkman, Chief Technology Officer. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
And Chief of Police.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ashley Gonzalez, Chief of your Police Department. Excited to be here with the rest of the team.
Thank you. Our Human Capital Officer.
Leslie Stevens, glad to see you all here this evening. Look forward to our conversation.
And our Chief Officer of Intergovernmental Relations and Board Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacob Reach, and I'm excited to be here with our Austin and McCallum vertical team staff.
Thank you, Dr. Reach. Next, we have our Executive Director of Innovation and Development.
Everyone, Michelle Wallace, thanks for making time to be here this evening.
And Chief Operations Officer.
Hello, everyone. Matthias Segura. Look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And our Chief Communications and Community Engagement Officer.
Hi, this is Jason Stanford. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have prepared a few questions this evening. If you saw the advertisements for the event, we wanted to talk a little bit about budget and strategic plan, but we really want this conversation to be about what's on your mind. So we will have a few questions that we anticipate you'll want to hear. We also have the questions that we received from the registration. So we are going to do our best to get to those questions. And if we don't, we have ways of following up with you to make sure that your questions are answered. But to get us started, I will ask a little bit about what I know everyone's kind of excited about right now, which is graduation and closing out this school year. If Dr. Mays, you would tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you. Just making sure everybody can hear me. Of course, we are approaching graduation, and it's going to be, of course, different given COVID-19. And so we will be having open air graduations, and those will be taking place from May 28th through June 3rd. And we will be hosting those in our outdoor stadiums. And of course, we'll have all of our safety measures in place, making sure that temperature checks are there. Each student will be able to bring 4 guests so that we can maintain social distancing. And again, it'll be a little different because we won't have a band per se, but we will be able to port in music for us to be able to, as best we can, replicate that rites of passage for our student. In addition to that, we also have our proms. And so proms will, of course, be, we'll be moving forward with proms in a safe way. And so you have an indoor-outdoor combination of events where food will be packaged, so students aren't having necessarily to share food. They will be able to bring a prom guest to that event and be able to, again, celebrate and have that rites of passage while safely social distancing and being able to, again, just enjoy, hopefully, as close as we can, a routine end of the class of 2021.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. I'm glad to hear that we're going to have something that's a little bit more typical what we would expect during graduation time. So with that, I know that we did get a lot of questions in our registration, and we wanted to lead into, we know what's on a lot of folks' minds right now is what we can expect next year to look like. So I'm going to invite Dr. Elisalde to respond to that a little bit.
Thank you, Ali. And before I forget, I want to thank our interpreters, our ASL and our bilingual interpreters for us. Sometimes we talk a little too fast when we have interpreters, or we all have a different cadence, so they do a wonderful job. So thank you for that. And of course, thank you to all the staff for taking time to engage with us. So next year, we know now with all of the information that's been provided to us that we will be providing a much more, what I'll term right now, a more traditional face-to-face type of environment when we welcome our students back for the 2021-2022 school year. Many questions that have come through include, in that traditional design, will masks be required? We will continue to require masks as long as the CDC continues to say that that is what is necessary. We have found that the masks have been very effective, and so we don't want to stray from what the CDC is, of course, the data are telling us. With regard to virtual options, we started off thinking we would be able to offer a very robust option. The commissioner had a meeting with all the superintendents of the state many weeks ago, immediately prior to this legislative session. Something must have occurred, because the last meeting he indicated that the only way we would be receiving funding for virtual delivery of instruction next school year would be if the state legislature passed such a law. And so the chances of some of that are now becoming much slimmer. Our team is still working to create a virtual option, but we want to manage expectations that that option may come with required reasons for students that would be eligible for a virtual delivery of instruction. So the team is still going to move forward with having that. Unfortunately, we can't give you all of those details because the state also has not communicated what the requirements will be for us to have a virtual type of design. What we are committed to is ensuring that our teachers are not concurrently delivering instruction. We know that while that was one of the, in terms of, it was a convenient decision, but it was not an effective nor a fair delivery method that the state provided us as an option. So what we are committed to, regardless of what the commissioner ultimately decides, is if we do have families that will be choosing virtual, that may be an option, that we will work, principals will work collectively in some instances across campuses, because teachers will only have one instructional delivery required. They will either be doing delivery, what I'll call for now, traditional in the classroom, or they will do a virtual delivery. They will not be doing both. That may mean we may not have enough students at certain schools to complete an entire, let's say, class of, let's say, third graders. So we could work with certain principals collectively so that we could offer that if that in fact becomes something that's available. And we know that you principals are the best at partnering. Parents will have to select or a commitment. If in fact we go to a virtual, they will have to commit to a minimum of 1 semester. And that would be necessary because you as principals and teachers have to be able to plan, and we can't be moving from so many students in a virtual setting to so many in an in-person and then back and forth. This has been, of course, an unusual year, but we've learned a lot from it, and we want to learn from those lessons that weren't very successful and continue to build on the success that we've had. So hopefully I kind of got out some of the big ideas. I wish I had more answers, but sometimes the best I can do is at least tell you where we are with the information that we have at this point.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizalde. And I'm scanning the questions that were submitted, and I think generally, I think you might have touched on just about all of them in that explanation. So thank you so much. And folks, feel free, please, throughout this conversation, if you want to drop your questions in the chat. I'll also be keeping an eye on the participants. So if you want to raise your hand, I'd be happy to allow you to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question if that's your preference. In the meantime, I did see one question from our registrants just about what are some long-term learning models that that resulted from what we've learned from having to adapt to this, and in what ways might we be able to continue benefiting from some of the things that we've learned, even when we do return to that more traditional school experience.
I'm sure that the team will add a few things to this, but one of the things that we learned the most of is the ability to be more personalized and to be more accessible. So for instance, if we have students who are wanting to take a calculus class, and there's only an AP calculus class, and maybe there's only 11 students at one school and 5 at another, we could now use technology as a method of ensuring that all students would be able to have access. So I think technology at a minimum, and from its best point of view, is it's provided us the ability to create more accessibility. Now, that's not going to be true for every program, because some programs are so hands-on that a virtual kind of delivery may not meet that need. But it has also afforded us an opportunity to think about personalized learning. How do we really implement a blended model? So sometimes some of these, crises create a need for us to reinvent ourselves. And I think the ability to personalize by having some students within your classroom utilize technology in a hybrid model while you're providing as a classroom teacher some additional supports, I think is something that's very valuable. I also think from a mental health aspect, we've been able to see that more families and students were able to actually keep their appointments with regard to some counseling services, because so much of that could be done in a virtual setting. So you think about the barriers or the complications with just life, work, balancing children, all of those things, cooking dinner, all of the requirements, and then I have to get to a counseling appointment and I've got to get in the car and I've got to drive someplace. So I think technology has, again, afforded us some accessibility to some areas that maybe before we were we do it that way because that's always the way we've done it. And this is, really just, it's challenging us to utilize the lessons that we've learned. So I think those are a few things that I've recognized. I don't know if any of the team members have some other thoughts about things that we're implementing from our lessons learned.
Yeah, Dr. Elisalde, I think you highlighted a lot of those. Definitely using the virtual option to connect to schools quicker, saving that time to drive across town to get to schools quickly. Definitely in the instructional model, the blended personalized learning and capturing the tools that we've learned to use this year and really pushing them through our courses next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. I did see a question come up in the chat while we were talking about that. There's a question about when the vaccine is available for children, will the district require vaccination like other vaccines are required?
Dr. Elizalde, I think I can provide some context on that. So the Texas Department of State and Health Services is the group that is actually responsible with creating the Texas minimum vaccine requirements for students, and do want to make sure that everyone knows they do have some exemptions to that are allowable by families under certain situations. But right now we are limited by the Texas Department of State and Health Human Services on what is on their list for what vaccines we can require for enrollment in a school district. So for us to require a COVID vaccine, the Texas Department of State Health Services would need to update their list. I do know that that is a discussion they've been having, both nationally and at the state level. And when we get more information on that, we will be sure to share it out with families.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reach. And then a little more question on the topic of the face-to-face. This is an interesting question. So will face-to-face classes and teachers still need to be prepared to shift to Zoom and virtual learning if quarantine is still required due to positive COVID cases? Do we have a sense if we're going to be needing to prepare to pivot like that this coming school year?
Yeah, we're developing, of course, we have to keep up with all of the changes that the CDC may be bringing forward. At this point, it looks like quarantining will be becoming smaller of a time frame. And in fact, right now, we could actually go to a 10-day. My concern with that, to be very honest, is that there have been some small areas where we've had some concerns of some outbreaks, and we wanted to make sure we weren't contributing to that. And unfortunately, you know, that example of one sometimes stays in your mind. So the day that I was being asked, would I approve us moving from 14 to 10-day quarantining, which initially sounded like a great idea, our director of nursing happened to contact me to let me know one of the individuals who was currently on a quarantine, one of our employees, one of our team members, actually got officially diagnosed with COVID on the 14th day of quarantining. And so again, it's that I'm being very transparent. It's the example or experience of one that then affects how you move forward, because you're like, oh, how many more of these are there if I minimize that to 10? However, as we continue to have more and more individuals vaccinated in our community, I definitely see us moving to a shorter period of quarantining. And then beyond that, I think we want to really talk about what are the options when we get to quarantining students for this next school year that would not include teachers having to shift to Zoom while doing face-to-face instruction. I think there are some parameters that we'd like to provide you as campus leaders to think about what would work best for your school. Do you need to have almost more like, yes, there would be some assignments that would be provided to a student and maybe some touch points during that period of time, because hopefully by then the period of time of quarantining would be reduced to a much smaller period of time if we're having to do them at all. But so much of that is going to be dependent on when we reach herd immunity. And of course, there's also the always unknown. If there's a new strain somewhere that suddenly responds differently, then you can all see that everything I've said right now could suddenly no longer be true, right? And so we're all just working, but we also know the quicker people receive their vaccines, the smaller chance of our virus is continuing to regenerate and therefore mutating into different kinds of strains. And that's why the rush to vaccination also helps with the different types of modified versions of the virus. So again, not giving a specific answer other than saying we are going to work to find a way for teachers not to have to do both face-to-face and the virtual delivery. It's just an untenable request, and we'll figure something else out before I ask you to ask our teachers to do that again.
Thank you. And I see a hand up by Leanne Hames, which did you have a follow-up question you wanted to share with us?
Yes, hi, thank you. Are you able to hear me?
We can.
Okay, Leanne Hames, I'm the librarian over at Lamar, and I kind of wanted to follow up on some of what you were talking about and to toggle back a little bit to the virtual learning option for next year. So I know that you are still working on a plan for that, but I was honestly just curious if the district might ever consider setting up a district-wide virtual school, kind of in the same vein as like a K-12 or a Connections Academy. And I asked that because we have seen that although some students have struggled with virtual learning, we do have that population of students whose learning styles have really thrived with virtual learning, and it just kind of lends itself to what we already know is that one size does not fit all whenever it comes to our students. And it seems like it would be a nice long-term solution for those students that we lose to online schools such as K-12.
We could not agree with you more. The challenge is the commissioner nor the state of Texas are allowing public school districts to receive funding for creating such a school. So, but I've asked our team, because every now and then there could be a way for us to find some workarounds. There is one school district that will go unnamed that did submit and somehow got approval for a hybrid technology. It's not completely virtual, but it's a hybrid model, and it's going to run as a complete school. I don't remember the grade levels exactly that are being offered, but they will be opening that this next school year, and they were able to receive funding because they applied for that school under a different category, but it did have to have some face-to-face contact hours. So I still think I'm going to think positively, Leanne, that at some point the state will have to recognize that they are really making it more difficult for public schools by not allowing us the same option of funding that they do for all of these other schools that get to have these online versions. Because you're absolutely right. It is about, we've learned a one size fits all, is just not the way to go. And yet they tell us to be creative. They tell me to tell you all to come up with ideas, and we come up with ideas, and then they say, oh, we're not going to fund that. But we're going to continue to lobby, and we're going to continue to create some of these models because we know our kids need them. It's just going to be difficult to see how many we can fund initially, since the state won't be giving us dollars for students that would be in that setting.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'd be absolutely happy to help lobby if we were given any resources on where those efforts could be directed. As a educator, I would be happy to help lobby on behalf of the district for a model of that sort. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hames. I will go ahead. I do see a follow-up in the chat. If briefly, I think this has kind of been answered, but the follow-up question was if we imagine there will be a remote option at every campus. I think the answer is we're not exactly sure yet, but probably not.
It's going to depend on, if we can offer it at all, what are the criteria under which we can offer it? How many students then will opt into that? So could it be one at every school? It could, if two things would be met. One, we'd have to have enough students, and two, we'd have to receive funding. If those two areas are met, then it's possible. In other instances, let's say the funding is there, but we don't have enough students that chose that option, then we might be combining two different schools, student sharing, if you will, so that we could still meet their needs. The biggest challenge there for us is truly going to be, what is the state actually going to fund?
Thank you. And I know we spent a fair amount of time on these questions, but I think they're of high interest for our staff in particular. I will transition us then to the next topic we were hoping to discuss this evening is the budget. I'm sure anyone who's been with AISD knows that we've definitely been through our budgetary challenges, and this year is no exception, especially kind of with COVID and all of the other kind of issues that have arisen for us in terms of the weather events. So where does that leave us? In particular, because we're talking with staff today, what might that mean in terms of staffing for our campuses?
Well, I think I'll just start with, our need to reflect that there has been a decline in enrollment. And I know that that's a challenge across the board, and it's happened in districts. If you just read, I think it was the Statesman, I don't remember, earlier this week, I saw an article on Pflugerville where they're actually going to be cutting positions that have people in them rather than trying to actually help individuals whose position may be being done away with because of declines. We are guaranteeing that no one will lose their job because of our realignment of staffing. We're committed to that. We're going to continue to do that. I think the biggest challenge is it's always tough when there's a decline of students. Even if we get students back the following year, I think you'll hear from Mr. Gogonas, we actually can't reconcile an increase in student funding. We won't get those funds till the end of that school year. And so you end up like you have to front load when you have to add. So we actually, even though we lost nearly 5,000 students to enrollment, and a large number of those are coming from some lower level, you know, our pre-K, our kinder, our first grade seem to be in particular. They were across the board, but they were definitely concentrated at the elementary lower grade levels. We are still being positive in thinking that we will recoup about 50% of those in our first year. We think we could end up with around 77,500. It's slightly lower than that, but I'm going to give us the ballpark of 77,500. And so by adjusting the staffing, which does include central office, so there are quite a few vacant positions. And so the actual effect across our district is not very dramatic, but at a few schools, it is very dramatic. And I'm very sensitive and I'm understanding of that. We have to work towards that. But we're going to work with every teacher and every staff member that may be affected. We want to wait to see if the position opens at that campus before we talk about reassigning individuals. So it's going to be, you know, it's not going to be one of those where we're just going to, this is the way we're going to do it. And it needs to be more engaging and more process oriented so that we can really be more human centered in the way in which we move to having to make these decisions. Now, we may have had to look at some positions that were supervisory in nature rather than delivering direct services to students. But what we weren't going to do is we weren't going to cut programs that were providing direct services to students. And in fact, in some of those areas, we know that an expansion of some of those would actually give us some increase possibly in enrollment in some of our campuses because there is a desire for certain programs. So we're going to continue to work with all of you and our new communications officer, our chief communications officer, so that we can get more of our information out. And then the goal will be to, as we started with some of our Operation Reconnects, to reconnect with our students, bring them back in. Heard from some principals just yesterday that some of them, just from our first Operation Reconnect that Dr. Mays orchestrated a couple of weeks ago, we've already re-enrolled several students, even for this school year, just because we went and knocked on a door and asked some questions and gave them some information. We're making some adjustments to transportation. We think that has also caused some challenges for some students, particularly in East Austin. And so even though the state only pays for reimbursement outside of the 2-mile radius for our schools, unless there's a hazardous condition, we're going to move within that 2 miles and we won't get reimbursed from the state, but I don't look at it as an expense. I think that's an investment in our students. So,
Elisalde, if I can quickly, I'm being reminded that our interpreters are having a little bit of a difficult time keeping up, and it's not just you, I'm sure I'm doing it too. So just a reminder to all of our panelists we know lots of great information to share, but we want to make sure that we can translate it with fidelity. Did you have something to wrap that up with Dr. Elisalde, or were you through?
I think that was the end for right now. Thanks.
Perfect. So I want to go next. If Ms. Stevens, you would want to touch a little bit about how we know that there's been some changes to the staffing guidelines, and I know that there were some weights applied, and there was a lot of kind of confusion about what that might mean in terms of the staffing levels at our campuses. And we definitely had some questions in our registration about the impact that has to fine arts and things like that.
Yeah, so we did do some adjustments to our strategic staffing guidelines. And what that means is we had staffing guidelines in the district. If we would have just taken those same staffing guidelines and applied them to the projected student enrollment for next year, we would have lost approximately 600 campus-based positions. And so instead of doing that, we kind of got an opportunity, as kind of what I consider it, an opportunity to look at our staffing guidelines and determine how we could adjust our staffing guidelines to be more equitable in terms of our student populations that we serve. And so we did a couple of things. And for those of you who are from an elementary perspective, every year we get a projection for a grade level. And so let's say they were projecting 60 students in 3rd grade. Well, they always took that 60 and divided by 22, and that was the number of teachers you got. And then campus principals then had to figure out how to maneuver those numbers and maneuver students around to meet language needs. Instead of doing it that way this year, we did it up front. So we took the projected numbers and we went, the multilingual department provided us a breakdown of that 60 as to how many would need to be ESL classroom and how many would need to be in a bilingual classroom. And so we separated the students by language need first and then applied the formula. So that way we know going in that we have a pretty good idea of meeting language needs. Another area we looked at elementary was our pre-K classrooms. In the past, our pre-K classrooms always dismissed prior to our other grade levels. So if you put yourself in a parent's shoes, that means I would have to make arrangements to have my pre-K 4 student picked up, and then 45 minutes later, turn around and have my other children picked up, like a 1st grader. So instead of doing that, what we did was we went to the traditional 22-to-1 staff to student ratio in pre-K 4, and we're adding in a teacher assistant so that the dismissal time can be the same for all the students on that campus. So then let's move to secondary. At secondary campuses, what we did was traditionally the previous staffing ratio that was used was 29-to-1. We dropped that down to 28-to-1. But in addition, what we did is, and I'm going to use an example. So if there were 1,000 students projected on a campus, and this year in October, if 200 of those students were identified as economically disadvantaged, then we took those 200 students and we applied a weight of 1.2, multiplied, and then added them in, and they got a new weighted student projected enrollment. So instead of it being 1,000, I'd have to do it really quickly in my head, and I don't know if I'm that quick to follow it. But so you got a projected student enrollment that was weighted, and then we did the dividing of 28-to-1. So that way we're accounting for more teachers being on campuses where we have a greater need by students. And I say that because if you look at our achievement gap and those kind of things, a campus can then say, you know what, our data shows us that we really struggle in English 1, and it might be the writing portion or, you know, the composition portion. So they may say, okay, we're going to put an extra teacher to do English 1 to reduce those class sizes in that area. Another campus may say, you know what, we would be best served if we add in the AVID program. So that's what we're going to do with the FTE. So every campus can make those decisions in terms of what students are choosing to take for the following year or what their course requests are, but planning your master schedule based on that. And so those were the weights that we applied at secondary to give the teacher allocations. Another one will be the allocation that we applied, or the weighted allocation that we applied to 2 positions on a campus, the assistant principal position and the counselor position. And we know that, and we've all heard, if you've been on board meetings, is we do have a backup in terms of providing high quality service to parents and students in the area of special education. Well, we also know that when a student receives special education services, that there are legal requirements that go along with that. And so when the legal requirements are the meetings, such as the ARD meeting and those components. And so we accounted for that when we looked at the student enrollment and we weighted the special education population at 1.5 and to calculate out for our assistant principals and our counselors, so that we could ensure that that those positions could be in those ARD meetings or handle those kind of related issues as they came up on a campus. So we waited for those factors to provide that support. And so those are like the big brush areas. And what we basically did was push the reset button and are trying to make sure that campuses have what they need to meet the student needs on their campus.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stevens. And I see a follow-up question in the chat, and I think it might speak to a little bit of maybe there's some lack of clarity in terms of how the staffing guidelines work. And so just kind of simply put, I think because I'm seeing someone asking a question about 28-to-1, does that apply to Singleton? And so it's not necessarily how many kids will be in. So if you can maybe just briefly explain that.
Yeah, let me take that one just real quickly. First of all, let me reiterate, the original guideline here in our district was 29-to-1. We lowered that to 28-to-1 for secondary schools. However, that is merely the guideline for generating how many full-time equivalents or teachers you have. So for instance, if you think about a PE class is going to have more than 28 students in it, but that's not the ratio. So in singletons or in special courses, there are some CTE courses that may require lower numbers. So there's a variety of that, which is why the first level of staffing starts with this. The second level of staffing is programmatic effect. So if there are then some programs that are being affected and need an additional unit because the 28-to-1 isn't going to work in a particular area, that's the second layer of staffing that comes into play, which is the area that we're working on currently as principals. You all are developing your master schedules, putting student requests in so that we can then generate, here's the master schedule, here's what is still needed to make student needs. And so the only driving force here is we want to support you in making sure that we are having a master schedule that is built around what your student requests are. So no, the 28-to-1 simply generates the number of units as a way in which we can begin at the same level playing field from campus to campus.
Thanks so much for that clarification. I do see another question in the chat that I'm going to tie into these questions about staffing levels, because we know staffing levels are driven by our student enrollment. And the question I'm seeing has to do with advertising, which I'm assuming is kind of in relationship to our enrollment and the loss of students that we have experienced. But the question is, and I'm going to direct this to you, Mr. Stanford, I know it's something we were discussing just earlier today. So has the district explored advertisement options like those of our neighboring districts? For instance, I constantly see Facebook ads for Pflugerville ISD for their districts featuring their music programs. We have tremendous arts programs in ASD, and that is how we can recruit people back that we may have lost to other schools. For example, charters or privates. We should feature and sell what we can offer over other schools.
Short answer is yes. The longer answer is not only am I an AISD dad, my oldest son graduated from the McCallum Fine Arts program a couple of years ago. He was the marching band president. So I'm personally committed to making sure everyone knows about the good work that you do. And yeah, we are planning on not just advertising in the community about all the good work you do, about why people should choose AISD because of all the great programming, but we're planning some community events around the re-enrollment or enrollment effort that we've been doing. The work that y'all do in fine arts is second to none. And, you know, I chaperoned a band trip to Carnegie Hall a few years ago. And I saw my son, who can't pick up his underwear, kill it in Carnegie Hall. So if you guys can do that, you can do anything. And we're going to make sure we do everything so that people know what you do. That's a non-negotiable with me. We are going to brag about you until people tell us to shut up, and then we're going to do it more.
I can add to that too.
Please, Dr. May.
I think we've also been working with the team, the communications team, to try to promote those events. I mean, part of Operation Reconnect was tapping into some of those marketing opportunities. We continue to find out about more and more demand for our fine arts programs, and so we are looking at, you know, how can we replicate those programs and offer more opportunities for students. But the marketing piece is a big component of that. The transportation piece is another big component of that. And so we are having planning meetings about expanding those opportunities as well as marketing those opportunities throughout our district and our community.
Thank you, Dr. May. Sorry, I was muted there. With that, I think I would like to pivot us. I want to make sure that we do still save some time to touch on the strategic plan. And I see you, Ms. Resic. If I said that wrong, I'm sorry. I will, let me get this question that kind of started with the strategic plan, and then we'll come back around to you. But I'm going to ask if Ms. Wallace will talk to us a little bit about, it's been a little bit of time that we've been working on this 2020 to 2025 strategic plan. And I know that back in, I believe it was June, our Board of Trustees adopted the strategic plan framework. Can you explain to folks a little bit about how that came to be and what the next steps are after that?
Of course, thanks, Allie. Michelle Wallace again with the Office of Innovation and Development. And I know, thank you. Yeah, we have a couple slides. So as Allie mentioned, our trustees developed and approved the strategic plan framework and the scorecard, which is how we'll measure success last year. The framework includes our mission, our vision, our values, and our priority focus areas with equity as a foundation. The trustees were very explicit. Rather than having equity as an additional priority area, they really want to see equity woven throughout our work and throughout our focus areas. Our priority focus areas are student well-being and achievement, teacher and employee well-being, culture of respect, customer service, and fiscal stewardship and prioritization. And right now, Dr. Elisalde and her leadership team are working on developing the strategies and action steps that will move progress under those priority areas, using the feedback that we've received along the way, and also the tremendous work that our Office of Equity has done over the last year, engaging our community and developing an equity action plan, really working hard to incorporate that work and feedback into the strategies as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I'm going to go ahead and go to this next slide. If Dr. Elisalde, you wouldn't mind, we did have a question in the registration. I saw there was a question about where can I see these strategies? And I believe that falls into the action plans. So is there a timeline when that might be made publicly available, or can you help us understand that a little better?
Actually, I'm going to turn this over back to Michelle and let her go ahead and finish this slide along with answering that question.
Happy to do that, Dr. Elisalde. Yes, so you can see here the graphic how these pieces feed into each other. The scorecard, then right now the district improvement plan are the strategies and action steps that the team is developing as we speak. Our goal is to bring those strategies to the trustees as an informational item on the 13th of May. And we did have a session with our principals on Tuesday to share the draft strategies and got some questions and great feedback at that session. And so if you tune into the board information session on May 13th, you can learn more about that, and then we'll be rolling that information out as the plan moves forward.
Thank you so much. And on the topic of strategic priorities, we did get a few questions. I saw one in the chat earlier about special education. So Ms. Casas, I think I might want to ask you in the same question, something that we heard both in the registration and also in the chat, if I can find it. But the first piece was there were questions about our plans for making sure that students are evaluated for special education within the 45-day window. And on a similar note, wondering what is our plan for inclusive K through 12 special education. So would you mind touching on that a little bit while I find the other question in the chat?
Sure. So as you are well aware, it's been very public that we are behind about 900 of the initial valuations that we've past due on. And so we have a team working day and night on those. And so as of today, every single one of those 900 parents should have been contacted to give them an update on where we are. So we're using outside contractors to come in on weekends and evenings to start helping us since we have so many vacancies in the LSSP and Ed diags. But we have set an aggressive goal of having all of those 900 evaluated by June 30th. And in the meantime, we're building systems to monitor and track students as they come in so that we don't get behind on any new referrals that are coming in. So it's kind of a double track, trying to get caught up in the ones that we're behind, and also making sure that we're tracking every new referral that comes in to make sure that we meet the timeline. And what was the second part, Allie?
The second piece was about inclusive special education. So what's our plan for that K through 12?
So we have
Simple question.
We have a lot of long-term goals. We do have an ED vacancy in the special education department, which will come on board in the next month or so. But we do know that we have a lot of work to do in the special education department. And we have a lot of opportunities for training to support what quality instruction should look like on the classrooms. What does least instructive environment really mean for our students? And then how do we really develop IEPs that are indicative of students meeting their grade level mastery goals and reaching their full potential. But obviously inclusion, the least restrictive environment should always be the first option. And so we will work to develop a training plan so that principals and teachers know how do we support our students. And then district-wide, we do understand we have a big opportunity for growth in the special education department. And so we recognize that there's a lot of improvements there that we can make on our end.
Thank you, Ms. Casas. The question I saw in the chat earlier had to do with staffing. I think thinking about the possible reduction in staffing positions on our campuses due to the enrollment, how might that impact our SPED staffing, our special education staffing?
Yeah, so when we did, Dr. Elisalde talked about the several phases to the staffing, and the first round was just applying the current staffing formulas to the enrollment and then staffing schools based on that. What ended up happening is we went through round 2 of what campuses actually needed, and then getting the accurate data to provide the staff that you needed, it became a bit challenging. And so we did go back to the drawing board and allow campuses to keep the staff that they currently have, and not make those cuts, knowing that we have those 900 students that are about to be evaluated. And then there's another group of new incoming students. So we may have to do some shifting across the district to get the staff where they need to be, but we are currently staffed to accommodate those incoming students.
Thank you. I know we had someone who raised their hand earlier. I didn't know if you still had that question or if you want us to come back to you.
My question was kind of echoed in the chat already, going back to, I know we said that the 28-to-1 necessarily isn't for every single person in fine arts in the singletons, but that's what's been communicated to us on our campuses. And so that's where I think we're all a little confused because we're getting a couple messages. So because the 28-to-1 is just not exactly what anybody's been asked to do in the past in AISD, and it's just going to be very difficult. So the question was, I guess, if there's any more clarification, because I'm hearing one thing here and one thing on my campus.
Yeah, I know we've worked with Mr. Lambert over in the fine arts area, and we do understand that. I know the example given in the chat was like, you have 8 that need tuba and 55 in wind ensemble. But overall, what we're looking at is on average, your content area teachers, like in English 1, your Algebra 1, if you think about having, they all have, in a regular 8-period day, they would teach 7 out of 8 or 6 out of 8 times the 28. And so you're looking on average at what is that, like 180 student course load. And so what we're looking at is electives. You have electives like Art 1, and Art 1 classes are generally higher than 28. So, you know, most of them I've seen probably right around between 30 and 35. And then, so that differentiation within the day occurs, but overall what we're looking at is what is a teacher course load, so that you don't have a teacher who at the end of the day has seen 20 students and another teacher who's seen 225. So those are kind of the differentiations within a course load and what you're looking at per teacher. I think right now it's just a matter of looking at what are students asking for on the choice sheets, and then building that master schedule. Can you meet that need? So in the case that was given, I might have 1 tuba class, but I might have 2 wind ensemble classes, and then my next class might be at 30. But if I look at overall for that teacher, what is that teacher's course load? And I just have to do that comparison from teacher to teacher in terms of the overall load.
Thank you. And I apologize. Can you tell me how your last name is said? I'm going to go ahead and drop Barisic. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and drop my email in the chat. That way, if you need more follow-up, we'll go ahead and make sure that that's clear for y'all that have those questions on your campus. We do have a few more minutes remaining, and I wanted to get the opportunity for us to hear from a few of the other leaders that have joined us today. Chief Gonzalez, we did have a question from somebody in our registration that wanted to know about what de-escalation training have some of our campus, or have our campus SROs received. And they're referencing, I'm not sure, I think you'll know what this is, 1-day SAMA verbal de-escalation would be helpful to reinforce language.
Thank you so much. So some of our officers have received SAMA, and we are also looking at other de-escalation techniques. Some of them have been suggested by our parents, and so we continue to monitor and look at different programs. About 2 months ago, we received racial intelligence training and engagement, which also focused on de-escalation and interacting with students in crisis or with special needs.
Thank you, Chief Gonzalez. Connected to the budget, we did also have a question, Dr. Hawley, that I heard from our registration. They were wondering, will there be any specific funds going toward diversity, anti-racism, equity, or inclusion classes? I'm thinking they might mean training, professional development, things like that. Would you mind touching on that for us?
Absolutely. Dr. Elisalde has committed funding to make sure we have district-wide cultural proficiency and equity training from the board level all the way throughout the organization. And so there is the budgetary commitment to fund those learning experiences for everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Elisalde. And I know we only have a few minutes left, but I am going to go ahead. Well, actually, one moment. Let's see. Madeline, if it's okay with you, I think we spent a fair amount of time on that. So if you wouldn't mind, I did drop my email in the chat. We want to make sure that your campus gets the questions that you have answered. But I don't want to spend too much time on understanding something for one campus. The other, I apologize. Sorry, y'all, I just lost my place. Oh, that's right. So one of the questions that we had a few folks referenced, wanting to understand, the district had conversations in the past about school closures. And there were a couple of folks in the registration who wanted to know, is this something that we anticipate will be picked back up, or what can we expect in the future?
My goal right now is all of the original plan of school closures are all halted. This is about working with our community to improve the conditions at schools that are creating. When I say conditions, I don't necessarily mean physical conditions. It might be, but in most instances, I'm talking about what are programs or issues that are needs at campuses that are causing some of our parents to choose other campuses. And not other campuses within our district necessarily, but actually charters as a specific focus area within the Austin ISD boundaries district-wide. We have over 16,000 students who are choosing to attend a charter school. That does not include privates. And so while gentrification has definitely had an impact on the decline of enrollment, it is not the only factor that has affected enrollment. And that is why I think we actually need to learn from the two vertical teams that we're visiting with now. We have many programs in these two vertical teams that are of demand. We need to talk about how we expand those options to students all over our community. And so by doing that, along with the question that was asked or the comment earlier about our advertising and our communicating, so that as we improve that, the goal here is to include the increase of student enrollment at schools rather than thinking about it as a static, oh, well, this is what's happened to us and therefore we must do this. I certainly cannot sit here and say we will never have school closures. That would be extremely irresponsible. What I am saying is that is not the direction in which we are working together as a team. And hopefully that's not the direction that you all are working with us, that we are all working towards improving what students and parents are requesting from campuses, and for the most part in certain areas of our communities, so that we can meet those needs, and therefore our students will re-enroll or enroll for the first time in cases where they've never enrolled, and we will never be faced with having to make decisions about school closures. So we're going to continue to work on thinking differently rather than seeing only one option as a means of addressing where we have student declines in enrollment.
Thank you so much. And we do only have a couple moments remaining before we jump right into our next meeting. And we encourage y'all to join us at that one. But I did have the opportunity to read all the way through Madeline's comment. And I just want to make sure that nobody walks away from this feeling like we avoided a hard question. And so I don't know if there's anything folks can add, and we only have a couple minutes left. So if we can, if any of our school leaders might be able to touch on, Madeline mentioned that this is not just an issue of impacting one school, but that some of these staffing, whether it be the staffing guideline changes or just the reduction due to the enrollment, that it is resulting in some instances, certain positions being cut. And I'm wondering, is there anything else that we can add to kind of clarify what can be done to ensure? And I think I saw in the comments earlier, particularly that making sure that no campuses make choices that end up resulting in not having fine arts at those campuses, or they're going to be guidelines. So in about a minute and 30 seconds, we would love to hear if anyone wanted to touch on that a bit.
Yeah, let me just, I guess, probably close with this. Again, we have to recognize that we've had a loss of student enrollment, and we have to ensure that we right-size ourselves. There are so many things that could help this situation, not the least of which the federal government actually giving us our portion of the ESSER funds, which would make this situation certainly much more palatable, and we would have additional options. We want to continue to work with our principals, so I would encourage you to have, if you're a teacher level staff member, to work with your principals. Your principals will work with their executive directors and the school leadership team so that we can evaluate each and every single campus situation. It shouldn't be a one size fits all, but we do have to ensure that we do have equity across our district. So we have to start with some tenets of equity, and then we have to continue that equity model by asking what are the specific needs at a campus. I absolutely assure you that even if it gets all the way to my desk, we'll look over a master schedule and we will look through. We're very fortunate. We've got some former high school principals that guide us in our human capital department. I see Brandy Hoshek on here. And so we have those individuals working with your principals, and will continue to do so that we can address the very specific class or a course or something in which student needs are going to be negatively affected. We absolutely want to actively engage in that. We won't shy away from that conversation. We will work with all of our campuses. Just work with your principal, and your principal will work with us, and we'll find the best solution for our students.
Thank you so much for wrapping this conversation up with us with that clarity, Dr. Elisalde. And I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to be with us this afternoon into evening. We are going to be jumping over to the community conversation. We hope that many of you will join us. If we didn't get to your question, I've dropped my email in the chat a few times. You're welcome to email me. We also are saving the chat. So if you're a staff person, we have been following up with staff folks by emailing you and connecting you with the leader who might have an answer to your question. So thank you so very much. Thank you especially to, I know we already said this, but our ASL and Spanish interpreters. We know that we did not make your lives easy this evening. So thank you very much. And we'll see you hopefully in a moment in the next event.